knows me, but since we do have a guest, wait, hold on, I got to get this pop-up out. Since we do have a guest, I am Trudy Amstad, and I am a member of this chapter, Chapter Q. So, as a disclaimer, I'm going to be talking about end of life doulas. Oh, this is so weird to me to look at myself as I'm talking. I've never done this before, so sorry.
If you want, you can change the view back to all of us.
I think I'm going to do that. It's just I find it really distracting. I'm so sorry. Valerie, there we go. Okay, I feel better now. As a little disclaimer, I have never worked as an end-of-life doula. So when Margaret originally asked me, it was my intent to do that. I have taken the training to be an end-of-life doula, but I don't have any direct experience in it. But I will tell you the little bit I know about it and share that with you and my experiences that I've had. What I do know about it is that whenever I mention to somebody that I'm an end-of-life doula or I want to be an end-of-life doula, I usually get a very blank stare. And people just don't know what to do with that because it is very unusual. So I thought I would just start with some of the common questions I get asked. And obviously the first one is, what is an end-of-life doula? They're also sometimes called death doulas, but we typically say end-of-life doula. And end-of-life doula is a non-medical professional, and I'll stress non-medical, a non-medical professional that offers support to a person and or their loved ones at the end of life. So this can mean spiritual, emotional, physical support to the individual or their family. So what might that encompass? So as a doula, there's several things you might do. And probably one of the most time consuming, or probably what you would spend the most time doing, is simply sitting with that person and being with that person, allowing the space for them to process their emotions. What they are going through, anything that arises for them. They might want to contemplate their life. They might need to process past traumas. They might have relationships that they feel they need to mend or just get some closure on some issues. What is really stressed in our training is that doulas are not there to give advice or to solve any problems. We are just there to guide, support, and make the space for this person to process whatever emotions come up for them. One other thing you would help this individual is just making sure their affairs are in order. So making sure that they have advanced care directives, healthcare proxy, power of attorney, all those type of things. You're not expected to know how to do that, but perhaps have the resources that you can guide them and give them, referrals. Another thing a doula may spend a lot of time with is what we call vigil planning. And that is simply planning how you want to die. There is a lot about death that we can not control, obviously, but we want to create an environment for the individual that provides as much comfort as we can during that time and help them cope with it. So this could simply mean they want their dog with them. They want to be in their home if possible. I mean, so many things you can't, but you plan as best you can. They might want their favorite music playing. They might want it very quiet. They might want you to hold their hand. I mean, there's so many things. Wear a favorite baseball cap. I mean, there's just so many things this could mean to different individuals. And again, anything that will bring them comfort and help them cope. And I also think it helps the family, because when you're with a dying loved one, you feel very helpless. And if you know, like, this is what they want and I can do something to help them, it can be comforting for the family as well. Another thing a doula might do is legacy planning. So many people want to create something or leave something that they will be remembered by. In many instances, this might mean writing letters to friends, family, loved ones. So if they can't write, they might dictate to you, or you might just help them in that process. One woman was a gardener. She loved gardening. Her house was beautiful, and she wanted to create a community garden. So she was able to implement that, and so that there was an area, so she felt like she was contributing to the community and the beauty there. You might also provide early grief support and processing for the family left behind. So it's not unusual for a doula to be in contact with the family after the individual has passed for a few weeks, perhaps, just to help them normalize their grief, kind of help them in the very initial stages with that, make referrals again if that seems appropriate. It's stressed in our training that it's important to have a finite end to that. However, the individual, the patient was really your main responsibility, and you don't want family to become dependent on you. Where does an end-of-life doula work? Well, typically, it will be in a hospice or end-of-life care setting. Remember, I think it's something like 70% of hospice is provided in the private homes. So many times you will be in the individual's home, but you might be in a hospice facility, residential facility, even a hospital. And there are private practitioners too, so you don't have to be in a hospice program to have an end-of-life doula. So there are just private individual practitioners. What training is needed? The short answer is none. There is no formal training requirements. But you can receive certification. And of course, you're going to have a lot more credibility if you have certification and that training. Yeah, so I was trained through a group called INELDA, INELDA, and that stands for International End of Life Doula Association. The Hospice of the Western Reserve also has training for interested volunteers, and there's other organizations that provide training, but those are the top ones. And INELDA's like the big one, and locally was Hospice of the Western Reserve. Many times people ask me why I was interested in doing this and pursuing this. I'm not sure how I don't remember how I initially learned that this was even a thing, but I have always loved hearing people's stories. I think there's so much that we can learn from one another, and people that are at the end of life have a very unique perspective. So, I just really love hearing people's stories. And it's a very good way for me to reflect on my life and hopefully live a fuller life as a result of that. And another thing is, I don't share this with everybody, but my mother's death was a really awful experience. And I really wish I had had knowledge and somebody to support me, kind of help me understand what was going on, and kind of guide me through the process. So if I can be helpful to someone else, I would love to do that. Interestingly, I did not find the training to be an end-of-life doula morbid at all. It was a 3-day intensive experience. It was online. They do in person, but mine was online and what they call the intensive. And so it was 3 solid days of talking about death. But weirdly, all of us agreed at the end that this had been such an uplifting experience. You are taught techniques to really have in-depth and meaningful conversations. So much of our conversation is a little more shallow, but you don't have the time to do that when you're at the end of life. And it was really a very, very rewarding and enriching experience. And all of us agreed to that. So those are sort of the basics. And then I thought I would just give a few of the tools or tricks of the trade that was stressed during the training. One of them was to be culturally humble, to have sensitivities to the varying attitudes and kind of practices surrounding death. I mean, just even in our own community, you don't have to even talk about different nations or cultures, even in our community, you know, different faiths, different cultural backgrounds for sure, race, sexual orientation, all of those things can affect your attitudes towards the dying process. And it's the responsibility of the doula to educate themselves and to not make any assumptions. And Nelda is very good about providing educational opportunities. Every month they have a virtual course. The most recent one were practices of the Jewish faith. Now, saying that's a very encompassing because there's so many different ways of practicing Judaism as there is with Christianity. So, but it's still, it's giving you some education and some background in different ways of looking at this. And another thing that I think could be very useful in just everyday life, if I could put it in practice, is we were taught techniques for deep active listening. So the goal of deep active listening is to help the individual uncover what matters to them most and give them encouragement so they can find answers for themselves. And your job is just to maintain neutrality. Be very present, maintain neutrality, make sure you're not reactive to what they say, but you are supportive. And again, we don't fix anything. We don't fix anything. We don't provide advice. How can we know this person's whole life, you know, in a few sessions? So one way you can help guide them is by asking open-ended questions. And those are questions that don't have a concrete answer. So you could ask somebody, how long have you lived in this house? And they might say 20 years. Well, that's a kind of a shallow conversation. You don't learn a lot about that individual's emotions and how they approach life. You might ask something like, how has it been living in this community? I don't know, that's not maybe a great example, but just ask open-ended questions that don't have those finite answers and that can open the door for them examining their life and different situations. Well, we are taught in the dental field when we're taking health histories to always ask open-ended questions because you learn a lot more. I get so much more information if I ask open-ended questions. So if there's some answer that something they've checked on their health history, I'll just simply say, tell me more about that. And then a lot of information spills out that I never would have gained by asking them 1 or 2 direct questions. Another thing that is oftentimes hard to do, and you almost have to really practice it, is to allow for silence. Because if you think about it, this individual is really processing a lot of emotions. They may be going back through memories. They're at the end of life. Things move slowly for them, thought processes. So we are told to wait 4 to 5 long breaths. And then say something like, do you want to sit with this longer? Or what's going through your mind? And then that allows them to take more time to finish processing whatever it is you've been talking about, or move on to something else. We're also taught to avoid saying, I'm sorry, and to replace I'm sorry with thank you. Now, that took me a while to figure that one out, but it's not helpful to the person. If they share something with you that you find disturbing or would be upsetting to you, it's not really helpful to them to say, oh, I'm so sorry. That doesn't, they don't want to be a victim. It's not empowering at all to them. So they encourage you to say something more like, thank you for sharing that with me. And again, maintain as much neutrality as you can, but just say, thank you for confiding in me. I'm here for you. And you can even say, I don't know what to say. And that's appropriate, but to avoid saying, I'm sorry. Another thing that we've probably all learned this at some point in dealing with different situations is reflective listening. And that's when you reflect back to the individual what they've told you, so that you can verify that what you heard is what they actually said or what they meant. And then again, be supportive. You can say things like, I see how that would be troubling, or it makes sense that you feel that way. And finally, as doulas, we are taught to really take care of ourselves, because being a doula can be very emotionally draining. Yeah, Katie's shaking her head. And it sounds like it's all doom and gloom. You get a lot of beautiful stories when you talk to people, but I'm talking more about those difficult conversations that you might have. But first of all, it's very important that you have a preparatory routine or ritual, because they need you present. They need you very present. So you can't be rushing from work, rushing from your day with this to-do list in the back of your mind and wondering how you're going to get this done tonight. So they suggest take a few minutes, have 5 minutes of silence, listen to music, whatever works for you, develop your own ritual, and then go and, prepare to be present. And then again, very, very important at the end that you decompress, create a space between your work and your personal life. And again, whatever that means for you, have some time of silence, have a cup of tea, whatever it would mean for you. And again, they stress, don't be attached to the outcomes of your work. You're not going to solve their problems. You're there to support them, but don't be attached to outcomes. And having said that, all of the doulas that I've talked to, which isn't a lot, have just found this work to be extraordinarily rewarding. And then just in closing, I just thought if you still have some curiosity about end-of-life doulas, there's a lot of YouTube videos, of course, about end-of-life doulas. And there's a couple of videos I'd recommend. They aren't actually about doulas, but one is called What Really Matters at the End of Life. And this is presented by B.J. Miller, who's a hospice physician. And he has his own story. And of course, he has experiences from his work. And the other, this is going to sound strange, it's called Why You Should Spend Time with a Dead Body. And it's by a mortician, and her name is Caitlin Dowdy. And then if you are ever looking or interested in having a doula for a loved one, I would recommend you contact Inelda, and that's INELDA.org. And I can email this to you, or contact the Hospice of the Western Reserve. So that's it in a nutshell. Any questions? Yes.
I
Yeah.
I was wondering, you mentioned that, at what point do you become involved with somebody? Because I know at Metro Health, I believe anyway, that they have a program where if they have somebody who doesn't have family, they have volunteers who will come in as the person is dying so they're not dying alone. But
Right.
from what you're describing, it's like you become involved sometime prior to that last,
Yeah.
hours.
Typically a doula does. I know some of the hospitals do have that, somebody that will come and sit with you and be with you, which is a real gift to these people, but they're not necessarily doulas. So, yeah. So yeah, you would start days, weeks, months ahead of time,
Oh,
you know?
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Trudy,
Yes.
Jan, are you done?
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
In Sunday's paper, there was a beautiful article by P.E.O. And Doris, my sister, I know you read him, Doris, but it is the end of the life, and how so many people see their friends and see their family that have passed on. It's just an amazing article. And I know the twins' mother, Sue, is a hospice nurse, and she verified this. And I don't know, Trudy, if they mentioned, that was very interesting what you shared with us about at the end of the life. One of the things that lasts to go is the hearing, and that you have to be very careful
Yes.
of what you say at the end,
Yes, that is.
because they can hear even after they have passed on.
Yeah, right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
exactly. I'll have to look for that article. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, very, very interesting.
Trudy,
Mhm.
this is Mary Beth. Can you hear
Yes.
me?
Yes.
Yeah, I always associated doulas with babies,
Yes,
the
yes.
delivery of babies. Is this just
So-
a common terminology for a
Well,
support?
yeah, basically it is. It's for major life transitions. It's a
Okay,
person. And actually the end of life doula concept grew out of the birth doula concept, in the 70s, something like that. But it wasn't until they became more prominent until about 2015. They haven't been around a long time.
okay,
Yeah, but it did come out of that movement.
okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Trudy,
Yeah.
Trudy.
Yes.
Does if you have hospice, do they recommend this or offer this to people? How's the connection made with the person?
Like how do you get
I mean,
hooked up with a doula or?
yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, I know Hospice of the Western Reserve that they will, if you request it. I don't know exactly their process because I haven't actually done it. But they provide training if you want, but they accept training from other areas as well. And I think if the family or the individual requests it, they will make a recommendation and find a doula for you.
Well, I would think that this is such a new thing that people wouldn't even know what to ask for.
Correct.
So you can't say,
probably true.
I would like an end of life doula if it's something that's only been around for 10 years.
Right. Probably people
Yeah.
don't even think to ask
No.
about. Yeah.
No, that's why I'm wondering, whether hospice would say, we offer this, we have people who will do this. This is something that you might be interested in.
Yeah.
I mean,
I would think they would, but I really don't know. Yeah. I really don't know.
Hmm.
Katie?
Katie,
I was wondering, is this something that like hospice pays for? Does the family have to pay for it? Like, are you volunteering your time? Are you getting paid? Like,
Yes.
what's the
So,
bill?
yeah, so a lot of doulas do charge and a lot are volunteers. So it's a mix. It's a real mix. Yeah. And how hospice handles it, I really don't know.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I can only imagine, I've gone through some trauma training, like with how to interpret for deaf people. But I can like, there's so much more I want to learn. I feel like you would have to, like, if I were you, I'd want to take all of this trauma stuff so I could like, oh, I'm hearing you, and just like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But again, I think I would have a hard time because I'm a fixer and I like to fix things. And it'd be
Yes.
very hard to just like
True.
be a listener. I can listen, but I'm like, I hear you saying this, tell me more. But like, it'd be so hard to like leave the story with the person and not take it home with you.
I
So
think that's what I will or would have the most difficulty with.
yeah.
So I think that's why I keep repeating it in my presentation to remind myself.
Right. But
So-
it's a beautiful gift to give to people to be a
Yeah,
end of
it
life
is.
doula. That's
So
really cool.
Trudy, do you put yourself out there? I mean, how would people know that this is something you've been trained in?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So I did sign up to be a volunteer with Hospice of the Western Reserve. And I tell you, they really vet their people. I had to provide references, have, testing done, TB, whatever. I had to have a background check. I mean, it was, it's appropriate. So I forgot your question. Yeah. So anyway,
how would
How
you
do you
get
how do you get a job doing this? I mean,
yeah,
how would
yeah.
somebody
So-
contact you?
So that's, they would allow you to have contact with people. So that's one way you could do it. I was thinking, quite honestly, I would start by just volunteering at my church. Now, that's not going to be like, people that are at end of life and maybe want somebody to sit with them and help them with these things. So you create it. It's kind of new. It's kind of new. And if you do Google End of Life Doula, you will see people who have websites and they are doing this as a profession and they'll list their fees and that type of thing. So, like I said, I haven't done the actual practicality of it, so that I can't, it's hard for me to answer
All
accurately.
right. Well, the reason I ask on that one is that my daughter does home health care.
Uh-huh.
And many times, with the home health care that she's doing, there are end of life experiences with that.
Of
And
course.
so that with the home health care, she does something like this, but she isn't trained in it. And the thing is that the home health care companies, if they knew about doulas, and I don't know that they do, that would be somebody they could say, well, we offer our services, but would you like to have a doula come in for end of life? They may be working with a hospice, not
Yeah.
necessarily here, but
Mhm.
working with the hospice. I'm just looking at the connections as far as how
Yeah.
this can be, people can
And I
find
think
out
it-
about it.
Yeah, I think it's, relatively new and there probably aren't an abundance of doulas out there. So, yeah.
One
Okay.
more question for you. I guess you might not know the answer to this since it's such a new profession, but did they mention who's the most vulnerable population? Like I just had the thought, I was like, oh my gosh, all of the deaf people dying and they can't talk to anyone about it because no one knows sign language. Or people who are in America who, all of their healthcare providers are speaking English and their native language is not English. So I
Right.
didn't know if there's been a lot of research about who the population is, what they benefit from, like was that kind of mentioned in your training?
Yeah, I don't remember that, but boy, that's a very, very good question. And yeah, the deaf community, they do feel very isolated, I'm sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Good for them.
Well, thank you for allowing me to share this little bit of knowledge I have on this and my interest in this. So thank you.
So I think I've told people in the past that I went to this concert that Eric Whitaker is a wonderful composer of wonderful choral music. And he was in town to do a workshop, an extended week-long workshop with the Cleveland Orchestra Chorus, and put on this program called The Sacred Veil. And one of the poems that was the kind of the catalyst for him composing this is one that was, it's called The Veil. And I'm going to put it up on the screen because it refers to this veil between life and death. And there's, at birth, you're passing from in one direction, whereas at death you're passing in the other direction. And it was, this thing was absolutely breathtaking. So let me just put it up, and I'll try reading it for you. Can you see it?
Yes.
You see it? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you make it bigger, maybe.
Okay, here.
There you go.
Okay.
Excellent.
So whenever the veil opens, whenever there is birth or death, the sacred veil between the worlds grows thin and opens slightly up, just long enough for love to slip silent, either in or out of this our fragile, fleeting world. Whence and whither a new home waits, and our beloved ones draw near, in rapt anticipation or in weary gratitude they stand. Our loved one stands so close right here, just on the other side of eternity.
Mhm. That's
So
right.
I, yeah, think that is, okay, pretty on point.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
but okay, anybody else with any questions? Okay, thank you, Trudy.
Thank you.
So, okay, if anybody needs to stand up and get a drink of water